In 146 economies, the World Bank's Knowledge Economy Index measures a country's potential to generate knowledge. Southeast Europe ranges at the bottom of performance in Europe. The PISA study measures the abilities of 15-year-old pupils in 65 economies worldwide in the areas of reading as well as mathematical and scientific literacy. Our pupils underperform. The region, for sure, has gone through ongoing cuts in education budgets and has a variety of administrational and political constraints. Teachers are confronted with diversity in classes and overcrowded classrooms. It is left to the teacher to inspire students, to motivate them and create a positive spirit towards learning. There is nothing we can offer to change bad surroundings, but we can offer suggestions of how to deal with them. We have put our suggestions in a book and we have structured them along topics that are familiar to you from your own professional education. Looking at the topics, you might now think that our book is just a repetition of what you already know about teaching methodology. However, that is not what our book is about. In fact, it is about learning.
This is a book about teachers and teaching. More specifically, it's a book that describes what teachers should know and do in order to become better at their craft. This is not to suggest that teachers are not doing a good job. Some are, others are not. It is to suggest, however, that all teachers, regardless of how good they may be, are capable of getting better.
The publisher of the book that we will now present to you is the Center for Democracy and Reconciliation. It was founded by a group of businessmen and diplomats who watched in horror as war-torn Yugoslavia apart in the 1990s. Nowadays, the financial crisis has cracked the fragile tie that unites the established and the transitional parts of Europe. Our commitment at CDRSEE is to join forces with the peoples of the region and enable genuine change that flourishes and grows from the grassroots of society.
The Center is probably known to you for the Southeast European History Project that we are running with history teachers in the region since 1998. All our projects are genuine Southeast European made products. We believe with working with experts in the region across borders, geographical ones as well as mental ones. That is why we invest in education and that is why we support teachers. Teachers as the agents of education, teachers as the most important actors that can bring our youth to reach its full potential.
Back to our book now. We will take you from an abstract policy level where you have little direct influence to the grassroots level where you are the main actor. All of you operate in a social context and in a school culture. These are the parameters of education that are given to you. You can't change them short term. The more you understand in how far they really impact on your classes, the better you can act within them, experience less frustration and more power. Within the social context and the school culture, you find your classroom. Here you are the boss, and this classroom you can turn into a learning environment. Once the environment is set, learning happens with the tools you have. The learning objective. What shall your students be able to do? The instruction. How will they get there? The learning resources. What will help them to get there? And the assessment. How do we measure that they got there? Once you have the tools in place, the alignment is what matters. Like in a puzzle, only if all parts are assembled in a coherent way, if they align, they will form the desired picture.
To accomplish this purpose, we offer a set of recommendations for teachers. These recommendations were selected based on the most important things that teachers need to know and do to improve as teachers. Each set of recommendations is contained in a separate chapter. Each recommendation begins with a verb. Select, promote, use, transform, design, create. The verb format is intended to emphasize that knowing something is not enough.
Every day we hear about reform needs, of compliance with standards, of the changing role of our schools, of new policies. More often than not, reform seems random, sends out conflicting messages and leaves you puzzled of how to comply. In reforming education, often the way seems the goal.
This process is very often aggravated today because of political populism and the intervention of modern media, which very often present political issues in a reality show fashion. In the modern world, new discoveries about learning and new technologies necessitate drastic changes of how instruction is done in the classroom and how information is presented to the students. This is very expensive and it's very demanding because it necessitates the change of habits among the teachers. All these reasons constitute educational reform a very complicated, a very demanding and a very hot process where teachers have a very important role. I would suggest that they stand above political disputes, looking into the best interests of their students, and this is going to be for the best interests of our society.
Në këtë mënyrë, shkolla luan një rol krejt ndryshëm në shoqërinë e dijes, i përshtatet të gjithë nxënësve, diversitetit të tyre në mënyrat e ndryshme të nxënit, duke përdorur në klasë strategji dhe metoda të ndryshme ku nxënësit përshtatin të nxënët sipas karakteristikave të tyre, dëshirave, nevojave dhe interesave. Në këtë mënyrë, ne na nevojitet sot të kemi një shkollë inovative, një shkollë që të shfrytëzojë potencialin krijues të nxënësve të saj, që të jenë problemzgjidhës, që të diskutojnë për çështje të ndryshme, që të përdorin të menduarit e tyre krijues dhe kritik, dhe të shikojnë çështjet dhe dukuritë jetësore në këndvështrime të ndryshme.
Here we are in the classroom, and as soon as you close the door, you are the policy maker. Whether a classroom comes to life and becomes a nurturing learning environment depends on the values we install.
After reading my chapter, you would be able to 1. Design classroom that A. have student learning as the primary focus, B. promote student engagement in learning, and C. minimize or eliminate barriers to learning. You should further be able to 2. create personalized learning environments where students feel a sense of belonging and a sense of well-being with respect to their individual differences. 3. Transform classroom into learning communities by promoting mutual respect, fairness and justice and teamwork.
Here are our tools again. In our lives, we're always trying to find ways of realizing our potential. We seek to clarify for ourselves the direction in which we want to go and what we want to accomplish. The purpose or the objective of this chapter is to help you clarify what you want your students to accomplish.
Дизајнирајте цели кои што ќе бидат од различни домени. Кога споменуваме различни домени, добро би било да ја користиме ревидираната Блумова таксономија, која што е дводимензионална и всушност се однесува на когнитивни процеси и на знаење. Ревидираната верзија на Блумовата таксономија ќе ни овозможи да дефинираме цели на 6 тежински нивоа, но исто така и да поставуваме прашања на 6 тежински нивоа. За полесно дефинирање на целите користете некој систематски процес. Еден од тие процеси е така наречената SMART анализа. SMART е акроним, што значи дека секоја буква од овој поим всушност има определено значење, но тоа ќе ви овозможи вашите цели да бидат специфични, да бидат мерливи, да бидат достижни, да бидат реалистични и да бидат временски ограничени. Користете ги целите за да им овозможите на вашите ученици да знаат што ќе работат во текот на наставата. Тоа ќе им даде насока во однос на активностите кои што тие ќе ги прават, но исто така и ќе ги мотивира за да бидат поактивно вклучени во самиот процес на настава.
Once we are clear about our direction, there are many ways to get there. It depends on our temperament and on our strength. Traditionally, instruction was about lecturing, but the knowledge society looks for movie directors who can turn their students into actors. The role of the teacher, like the role of the movie director, is in the background. He directs.
On nije samo izvor znanja, on nije neko ko poznaje fiziku, hemiju, biologiju, on je neko ko mora da napravi most između tih sadržaja i između onih kojima treba posredovati te sadržaje, koji sa tim sadržajem nešto treba da urade u životu. Praviti most je veoma složen i visoko profesionalni posao. Da bi se napravio taj most, neophodno je kreirati nastavne situacije u kojima će učenici biti aktivno uključeni. Znači, moraju biti relevantne, smislene situacije i sa stanovišta sadržaja i sa stanovišta učenika. Pri tome, neophodno je da budemo osetljivi na one sa kojima radimo.
Just as a movie director directs the activities of actors, he also plans for the requisites. Not all movie directors have a big budget. Learning resources, however, are not necessarily expensive. They're all around us.
My chapter is dealing with learning resources, which should be understood as anything that can serve as a tool for teaching and learning. Already, Jan Komensky recommended that all what students learn, they need to see, hear, touch or taste. When students are listening to a teacher, observing a picture, manipulating an object, watching a movie or listening to a music, they are encoding information into memory. Sensory experiences form the foundation of their intellectual activity. Therefore, without learning resources, successful learning and teaching is hardly imaginable. For pupils, learning resources provide an opportunity to learn. Potential learning resources are everywhere, so you should be aware of the variety of learning resources that exist in and out of school. Whether we are talking about human resources, objects of nature, or instructional media. It is up to teacher to decide their educational function in instruction. This chapter will offer some ideas how to select learning resources, how to align them with learning objectives and assessment, how to use them to meet diverse needs and learning styles of your students, and how to make learning resources come to life in your classroom.
How do we know that we are good enough now? What to measure and how? Who measures what and when? And is it all fair in the end? Does our measurement inspire to go the extra mile?
You have to make sure that you are really measuring what you are teaching. If there is a mismatch between your objectives and your assessment, students will likely have a low achievement level. Involving students in the assessment process is an essential part of good assessment. When students become partners in the learning process, they gain a better sense of themselves as learners. Offer to discuss with your students after the assessment in order to correct misconceptions and give them the chance to revise their responses if necessary. Thereafter, give them a detailed feedback, because a score alone does not supply sufficient information on their performance. And what is much more important for the learning process, a score does not explain what they could do better in the future.
Our last chapter fits it all together. From the grassroots to performance on the international stage, all of us are parts of the puzzle and all of us have an impact on assembling our desired picture.
And alignment is best displayed and understood visually. In the graphic on the screen, you will notice a series of triangles. The bottom triangle illustrates what we call horizontal alignment. At one point in time, to what extent are objectives, instruction, and assessment in a good fit, that they support one another. As you move up the page, you'll see more triangles. These represent different levels of schooling, different grades, or different school levels. As you look at the alignment from one level to another, this is called vertical alignment. At the top of the graph, you'll see something called international tests. Increasingly, countries are making decisions or examining their educational system based on students' performance on international tests. This raises an entirely different aspect of alignment. To what extent are the country's curriculum and instruction related to the specifications that are used to design international tests? I've been asked many times, why is alignment important? And I have three reasons that I think alignment's important. The first is fairness. To evaluate students on tests or projects that are not aligned with objectives or instruction is simply unfair. That we cannot expect students to learn things they haven't been taught. And if we test students in a way that is inconsistent with the way they are taught, that is another instance of misalignment that leads to unfairness. A second reason is opportunity to learn. Alignment ensures that more instructional time is spent on more important things, as specified in the objectives. And a third reason for the importance of alignment is what I call improvement. It's difficult to improve the quality of a school system, a school, or a teacher if there's not sufficient alignment. Only if there's sufficient alignment between objectives and assessment can instruction be examined and improved. After reading this chapter, you should have learned 4 things. First, you should understand the meaning and importance of alignment, both horizontal and vertical. Second, you should be able to estimate the degree of horizontal alignment, that is, the connections of objectives, instruction, and assessment at one point in time. Third, you should be able to estimate the degree of vertical alignment, that is, the connection among objectives, instruction, and assessment over time. And finally, you should understand how to use international test data to improve the alignment of a country's curriculum and instruction with international test specifications.